Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a playoff edition of NFL Pick'em with MadMen Sports and Beyond Football. I'm Brian of MadMen Sports along with Alex of Beyond Football. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm doing fantastic. Happy New Year to everybody watching, and a new year always means that football season is getting exciting, and that's what we're talking about today for the first time.
Yeah, you're right. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you all for tuning in, whether it's on my channel, whether it's on Alex's channel. We appreciate it. And like you said, when the new year rolls around, we come near the end of football seasons, and it's possibly one of the best times of year to be a sports fan. And I don't know how you feel, just in general. I feel like we have 4 incredible games to look forward to. There's not one single game where I can tell you with a full vote of confidence that I know what's going to happen.
No, same for me. I think it's going to be a really, really good week.
Yeah, absolutely.
We might just go like 1-3 or 0-4 on these. We never know.
Yeah, honestly, we might. And again, you even look at the Vegas spreads. It's 3 3-point spreads and 1 5-point spread. So no games that feel like gimmies. It's really nice. You don't see any of that. Those weird like wild card teams or 4 seeds that kind of slipped in with like a third string quarterback. It's just competitive teams. A bunch of teams that all feel like they have a shot to make some noise. So, with that, let's get right to it then. Let's get to the first wild card game, the 4 o'clock game on Saturday. Colts, Texans. Third time these two teams are going up. It's going on in Houston. What do you think of this one?
I think there's going to be a good game. Of course, it's always going to be an interesting game when you have 2 high-end quarterbacks duking it out. I'm going to go and pick the Colts, even though they're a lower seed. I think Andrew Luck is the better quarterback, and that says a lot because Deshaun Watson's playing well. I've mentioned this before, but I think the Colts are harder to stop than most people realize, and the division hasn't been that bad. So Indianapolis, for me, is an underrated team throughout the entire year. Andrew Luck has been playing at incredible levels, and I think he actually is going to get it done. I also like to see him duke it out later with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, no, I'm actually going to agree with you on this first one. I'm going to take the Colts as well. Texans are 2.5-point favorites, but, with the home field advantage, that Vegas is basically telling you these teams are even. And if you pretty much just exclude the first quarter of the season where they were kind of just getting into the groove, the Colts are one of the scariest teams in the entire league to me. They're built to play well on the road as well with a tough offensive line. They can run the ball well. As you mentioned, Andrew Luck has been phenomenal. Quentin Nelson has been a rookie phenom. So good that we're talking about him and he's a guard. That really says something. And while the Texans have the better defense, the better pass rush especially, the Colts match up better on defense, I think, because they have a pretty good defense as well, and the Texans' offensive line is just atrocious. And I can see Deshaun Watson being under pressure a lot in this game. And as talented as he is, I think the Colts are going to pull away in this one.
Yeah, I'd say so too. I think they have hit a really good matchup with their offensive line against the strength of the Texans' defense, which is their D-line. I think they're going to be able to neutralize these guys for the most part, and they'll look for guys like Darius Leonard to be making a lot of plays against, the dual-threat offense with Deshaun Watson. I think he's going to stick out as a rookie once again.
Yeah, exactly, especially, in a playoff game. And Luck, I don't know if the stat still stands, but I know around like week 14, he was the least sacked quarterback in the NFL, and that's a combination of offensive line playing well and him having fantastic pocket presence. So I agree with you that I think he's going to be able to kind of handle himself against that Texans pass rush. Moving on then to a primetime game Saturday night, presented as Sunday Night Football. Cowboys and Seahawks, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, 2 very good defenses. What do you think about this one?
I had a hard time making a call on this one. I think both of those teams are not necessarily considered favorites to go all the way, but compared to each other, it's a really, really close game. I'm going to actually go with the Seahawks. I do think that Russell Wilson is better than Dak Prescott, and they will ultimately be able to score on that one extra drive. The Cowboys will not be. However, it's going to be hard because Cowboys have one of the best defenses in the league, and Russell Wilson is going to have to pull out some of these escape miracles against that pass rush.
I want to ask you a question because based on your pick, let's say it's the fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, all else things equal, whether it's coach, offensive line, anything like that. Which quarterback would you want to have driving the team down the ball with 2 minutes left? This is any quarterback in the league, not just the 2 in this game.
Oh, any quarterback in the league right now?
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers, 8 days of the week.
So you're still going with Aaron Rodgers. You see, I actually think Russell Wilson this season, you can make an argument for that. The way he's played in the fourth quarter, he's made some phenomenal throws. His quickness, his ability to evade pressure, which is why I almost want to agree with you and pick the Seahawks. But when I see the way this Cowboys defense plays, especially at home, especially the way they've dominated some good offensive lines, the way they dominated the Saints in the trenches earlier in the season, I can see Russell Wilson's day being ruined by Leighton Vander Esch and DeMarcus Lawrence and Randy Gregory and, Jalen Smith, just all of these talented players. And I actually think the Cowboys are going to win this one in a close, grinded-out football game.
I'm going to agree on the close part. That's for sure.
Yeah. But I will say, despite all of that, the reason I asked you that question is because I'm telling you right now, if it's 13-10 Cowboys and Russell Wilson has the ball with 2 minutes left, and I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm on the edge of my seat because any play he could make, he throws one of the prettiest deep balls in the league, and I'm telling you, he's so underappreciated.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers, we just named him, has done that a bunch of times against the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
In his memory, actually.
Absolutely. And I think with Aaron Rodgers, it might be, it's 100% recency bias on my part, just because this was a rough year. Doesn't take away the fact of years of phenomenal play that he's had in the past. So I think that's still a fine answer. Moving on to Sunday, we've got a rematch. Just a few weeks ago, the Baltimore Ravens went into L.A. and proved both of us wrong and beat down the Chargers. Now they're hosting them in Baltimore. How do you think this one plays out?
I think the Chargers are going to get their revenge. Now, you talk about recency bias. The Ravens, although they won, but they got into the playoffs by the hair on their chin against the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know that they are starting rookie quarterback as the Cleveland. I think Philip Rivers is just going to get one over Lamar Jackson. Like, considering both guys' accolades, Jackson is playing really, really well. And he's kind of having that Colin Kaepernick factor. I don't know if you remember in the first season when Kaepernick was just running all over people, no one could stop him.
Yeah.
That kind of seems to be what Lamar Jackson is doing. I don't think he's going to make it that far, though. I think the Chargers are going to step up. They're going to contain him really well with the edge defenders on the defensive line, and they're going to walk away with the win.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that people didn't really talk about, because you don't really talk about the losing team's effort, is how well the Chargers defense neutralized Lamar Jackson. They've really been the only defense that have been able to really shut him down. They held him to 16 points. The other 6 points were from a defensive touchdown. I'm very torn on this game, especially looking at the Chargers. Hunter Henry is going to make a return for this game, possibly, the star tight end who's been out all year with an ACL injury. I think that's pretty interesting. In the end, though, I see the way this Ravens defensive line matches up against this Chargers offensive line. A Chargers offensive line where Phillip's been so good that he's kind of been able to cover it up. In the end, this offensive line isn't really good enough, and there's a reason the Ravens won. It's because they dominated in the trenches. And I don't really see things playing out any differently in this one, especially when you factor in the cold weather. So I'm going to begrudgingly take the Ravens to pull off another victory. This time it won't be considered an upset. And on the flip side, though, as your listeners have pointed out, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that I reverse jinx my team into another victory here. But I'm going to take.
Yeah, I think that's what you were going for there. I think you got your plan laid out.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very sneaky. There's a reason I signed up for this. But nah, I mean, I'm going with my honest feeling. But obviously, there's your heart and there's your brain. Moving on then to the final game. Very interesting game. The Eagles have snuck into the playoffs, and that should scare every NFC fan that's of the other 5 teams. They're heading into Chicago to take on a Bears team that surprised a lot of people this year. I was not one of those people. I expected them to be very good, but they surprised a lot. What do you think about this matchup in Soldier Field?
Well, first of all, the Bears did surprise me a little bit by how good they were. I thought they were going to be good. I didn't expect them to win the division before the year, but that's because I thought Minnesota was going to be good, which didn't turn out that way. So, Chicago looking really, really solid. I think they are going to beat the Eagles. Now, the thing is, I think this is exactly, this attitude from people is exactly what got the Eagles to the playoffs, not to the playoffs, but to the Super Bowl last year and actually got them to win it on the shoulders of Nick Foles as a backup quarterback, that underdog mentality. So I'm calling out the Eagles to make use of that and demonstrate what they can do once again. Now is the time to step it up. My money's on the best defense in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think when you look at it from a pure matchup standpoint, I agree with you. This Eagles offensive line has not quite been as good as it was last year, which is one of the main reasons that they were so successful. You've got Akeem Hicks and Khalil Mack that are just absolute matchup nightmares. And as great as Nick Foles has been, he's really been doing it against some pretty weak, deep weak defenses. And then you can say, well, what about the Los Angeles Rams? It's like their defense isn't very good in the first place, and the Eagles are one of the few teams with a good enough center to at least kind of take Aaron Donald out of the game a little bit. So that's kind of just a fortunate matchup. I'm hesitant, though. I'm just going to say it. I'm hesitant to pick against Nick Foles in a playoff game until I see it happen, until I see him lose. He really does seem to have that magic factor, something about him where he picks his spots and he turns it on to a different level when the playoffs come around. This is the toughest game of the week for me to pick, and because there's so many reasons that both teams could win. So I think we're actually going to disagree on 3 of these 4. I'm going to take the Eagles for kind of the reason I just said. Until I see this man lose a playoff game, I'm just going to believe he's impervious to losing.
All right, but say the Eagles win, are you going to take them in New Orleans?
That's where it gets real tough, because we all know what happened the last time they played in New Orleans, and it's tough to just pretend that didn't happen. I guess it all depends on how this game plays out. Do the Eagles grind out a 13-10 victory on their defense, or does Nick Foles have a 350-yard, 3-touchdown game in Soldier Field? Those, I feel like, kind of 2 different results that factor into my thinking. So, I know we were just kind of doing wild card picks, and I know I asked you a few weeks ago, but now that the playoffs are actually set, do you want to just kind of throw out a quick guess on the 2 championship games, the 2 conference championship games, and then who will represent who in the Super Bowl?
I'm going to pick the Saints and the Rams in the NFC. I don't think either one of the other 4 teams really are going to get by those 2. I think the Rams might be more vulnerable because they're more inconsistent than the Saints. I'm pretty sure that New Orleans is gonna make that happen. I think also that New Orleans at this point might make the Super Bowl. I originally had picked the Rams, but this is gonna be a tough game for LA. AFC, Chiefs and the Chargers right now. First of all, because that's what I want to see, and I believe in the Chargers more than I do the Patriots at the moment. I think Phillip Rivers is playing better than Tom Brady, and the question is how much can Bill Belichick really compensate for? I know he can compensate for a lot, obviously, but the Chargers have such great weapons all over the field. They have one of the best receiving corps in the league, and it's going to be tough to handle that on a consistent basis if your offense isn't putting up with the output of Phillip Rivers. So Chargers and Saints is what I'm going to say this week.
All right. I like that. I'm actually rooting more for yours. I think the Patriots are especially interesting because how good are they really at home? They really haven't had many tough home matchups this year. They did beat the Chiefs at home in a wild shootout, but that was so early in the season. So with the NFC is such a mess for me that as of today, based on my picks, I think I would have to pick the Saints to beat the Eagles. The Saints are just too good at home. And I think the Saints are going to end up hosting the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC Championship. I actually think the Cowboys can go into Los Angeles. I've heard a pretty good point that if they play the Rams in Los Angeles, that stadium's going to be 60% Cowboy fans because Cowboys fans travel so well, and LA is still picking their team. Meanwhile, in the AFC, it pains me to say it, I think the Patriots are going to win their first game. They always do. It's kind of similar to what I said about Nick Foles earlier. It's with the Patriots. Until I start actually seeing it, I can't pick against them. So I think the Patriots will win their game, and I think the Chiefs will end up losing to the Colts, actually. I think the Colts are going to go into Kansas City and upset them as well. Kind of like Andrew Luck did a few years ago. I think the Colts are going to head into New England in the AFC Championship game, and then I think the Patriots are going to win that. I think the Patriots are going to play the Saints in the Super Bowl as of today, and I still think the Saints are going to win it, and Drew Brees will hoist his second Super Bowl trophy.
Well, Brees and Brady does sound interesting. I think Colts beating the Chiefs is actually exactly what the Patriots would want because that gives them home field in the championship game. Otherwise, they'd have to go to Kansas City, and God knows that's not a nice place to play at, especially if you're not used to doing that, being the Patriots.
And I think the Chiefs would beat the Patriots in Kansas City, which is why if that scenario plays out, I'll have to root for the Chiefs because I think, again, as we've said on earlier shows, at least I'm fine with admitting it. I am sick of seeing the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
It's coming to an end, I can tell you that.
Yeah. But that's what makes this so exciting. Again, like last year, it really felt like we knew it was going to be Steelers Patriots, and then the Jaguars pulled off that upset. But even then, we knew then the Patriots were going to host one of those 2 teams, and the Patriots were going to go to the Super Bowl. It just felt like we knew that. And, the NFC, obviously, that kind of went a little differently, but It felt like it was going to be the Eagles before Wentz went down. It felt a lot less dramatic in the NFC and the AFC. And this year it really does. I can see the Bears beating the Eagles. All three of the picks I made that differ from you, I could really see being the opposite. I could see myself going 0 for 4. And I think that's what makes this year so much fun.
Yeah, I think this could go either way. I'm not sure about any of these games. Whereas in during the regular season, I could confidently get about 60 to 70% every week. But in the playoffs, the skill gap is just not that big anymore. So a lot of stuff can actually happen.
So much to discuss. So speaking of playoffs, then we're heading towards the end of the show. Do you have any thoughts on this college football championship coming up? Clemson will be playing Alabama for the 13th year in a row. It feels like. So what are your thoughts on this matchup here?
13th year in a row. I think Hunter Renfrow has played in all of those games.
yes, he has.
No, the college football championship, aka the Alabama Invitational, is staying exactly where it belongs, which is in Tuscaloosa. I think they did less than they could have in their game against Oklahoma. Actually, I was watching the first quarter and they went up by like 3 or 4 scores and they allowed nothing. And I thought this is going to be looking worse than Clemson did against Notre Dame for a while with that blowout, but it actually turned out to be somewhat close, at least not really if you watch the game. Yeah. But yeah, Alabama is. I have no reason to doubt him. I think Tua is the best. He's gonna win the game. I don't see any other way out of this.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick Alabama too. There's a reason. The fact that they're 6-point favorites against a team as good as Clemson just goes to show how great Alabama really is. I think Trevor Lawrence is very good for Clemson. I feel like every time I watch him play, he shows some pretty impressive just kind of poise and confidence, especially for a freshman. It's really incredible to see. But then on the flip side, you've got Tua. And Tua basically has everything that Trevor has, plus that mobility. I think Trevor's a little more accurate, a little more good in the pocket, but Tua's got that wild card factor. And this Alabama team, you just watch them on both sides of the ball. Clemson has yet to go up against an offensive line like Alabama's. And, this Clemson defensive line, you're going to see these guys going in the top 10, top 20 of the draft. But this Alabama offensive line is something else. So I'm with you. I think Alabama's going to win it again. And it's way too early to say, but I would not be surprised if we see those two teams meet each other again next year because they're loaded with so much young talent.
Tua is still having another year after this, mind you. And at any given point, if you look at an Alabama football team, about half of the guys on the field are NFL players.
Yeah. Yep,
right,
exactly.
So sure, I could agree with that. Probably again next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more with that. And we'll see. Maybe another year or two they'll expand the playoff, and maybe at least there will be a little more potential for some upsets. Maybe the problem won't be solved though, but we'll have to wait and see about that. So, you got any other thoughts in general about just like the any of the coaches' firings, any of the top few draft picks? You got anything else you want to share before we log off on this show?
Well, I think the coaches' carousel is really crazy at the moment. Of course, like just after Week 17, I think the Jets did themselves a solid in finally getting rid of Todd Bowles. I think the Dolphins also fired Adam Gase today, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's another kind of big one. I think there's a lot of shifting around going to happen specifically in the AFC East over the next few years, and that's going to have to start with. First of all, the Patriots having to go in a different direction at some point because they're not immortal, and the Jets and Buffalo Bills being fundamentally restructured. Looking forward to those teams grow and possibly taking over that division. The quarterbacks aren't in place as it seems. I just got to build around them.
Yeah, no, absolutely, could not agree more. And I gotta say, on the one end, I don't know about you, I'm so happy that the Bengals finally got rid of Marvin Lewis. I mean, it was about time. 16 years.
16 years.
No playoff wins, and I'm sure he'll be fine somewhere else. Maybe he can go to college. Maybe he can be a coordinator somewhere, but that project was done. The Bengals need just a complete overhaul. Get rid of Dalton. Get rid of Lewis. Tank for a year. Just be garbage. Trade A.J. Green for some draft picks. Just trade everybody that's worth anything. Right. Complete overhaul because they are going absolutely nowhere.
I think the Steelers actually might be facing something like that sooner rather than later as well, which leaves the door open for the Cleveland Browns of all teams in the league.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty crazy to think that next year it could be Browns or Ravens that end up leading that division.
Yeah.
Lamar and Baker, they're both pretty fun to watch. So, yeah, with that being said, then I got nothing else. So, unless you do, I'm ready to say thank you all for listening, guys. Really appreciate it. Hope you all enjoy the games as much as we do. Enjoy your new year. Hope you guys made some great resolutions. And with that being said, we will see you all next week. Thank you all.